The FIFA World Cup has been played 22 times since 1930, watched by a cumulative global audience that FIFA itself estimates in the tens of billions across nearly a century of broadcasts. Most World Cup matches are forgotten within days of being played. Most goals exist only in highlight reels nobody revisits. But a small number of moments, fewer than could be counted on two hands across the entire history of the tournament, did something different. These moments did not just decide a match. They changed how the sport itself was played, watched, refereed, or understood. This is the list of those 10 moments. Not the best goals in World Cup history. Not the biggest upsets. The moments that left football permanently different on the other side. Number 10, the Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, hosted the deciding match of the 1950 FIFA World Cup on July 16, 1950, in front of a crowd that FIFA's own historical records and contemporary Brazilian press reports place at approximately 173, 850, still recognized by Guinness World Records as the largest attendance ever recorded for a football match. Brazil needed only a draw against Uruguay to win their first World Cup on home soil. Brazil led after Frias's goal in the second half. Uruguay scored twice through Schiaffino and Gija, and Uruguay won the match 2-1. The Brazilian newspaper Jornal do Sports described the silence of the Maracanã after Gija's winning goal as a sound that had never existed before. In a stadium that size, 173,000 people falling silent simultaneously. The event became known in Brazil as the Maracanazo, and the Brazilian Football Confederation's own historical archive records that the national team did not wear white shirts again for nearly a decade, believing the color was cursed. This moment changed something structural for FIFA. The Maracanazo was the moment football understood, for the first time at this scale, that a match could become a national trauma. FIFA's subsequent tournaments began incorporating psychological preparation and media management into national federation planning, a direct response, according to multiple Brazilian football historians, to what happened at the Maracanã in 1950. Number 9, the Wankdorf Stadium in Bern, Switzerland, hosted the 1954 World Cup final on July 4, 1954, between Hungary and West Germany. Hungary arrived at the final having scored 25 goals in 4 matches, including an 8-3 defeat of West Germany in the group stage, a Hungarian team that football historians, including those writing in FIFA's own technical archives, regard as one of the most tactically advanced sides ever assembled, built around Ferenc Puskás and the deep-lying center-forward role pioneered by Nándor Hidegkúti. West Germany won the final 3-2, coming back from 2 down. West German manager Sepp Herberger's tactical adjustments, specifically deploying a man-marking system against Hidegkúti that no team had previously attempted, are documented in FIFA's technical reports as the first instance of a World Cup final being decided by a specific tactical counter, measure designed for a single opponent. The Miracle of Bern, as this match became known in West German football history, established the template for tournament football as a tactical chess match between national federations rather than simply a contest of individual talent. The Guardian's Football History Archive credits this match with beginning the era of dedicated opposition scouting in international football. Number 8, the Rosunda Stadium in Solna, Sweden, hosted the 1958 World Cup final on June 29, 1958, where Brazil defeated host nation Sweden 5-2. Edson Arantes do Nascimento, Pelé, was 17 years old at this final. Pelé scored twice in the match, including a goal that FIFA's technical report from the tournament described as involving a chest control, a lob over a defender, and a volley finish executed in a single continuous movement inside the penalty area. Swedish newspaper Aftonbladet's coverage from the following day, archived in the Swedish National Library's sports collection, described the Brazilian performance as introducing a style of football that European audiences had not previously witnessed at this level, what later became globally known as the beautiful game, a phrase whose origins football historians trace directly to international press coverage of Brazil's 1958 campaign. Brazil's 1958 victory, and Pelé's emergence specifically, is credited by FIFA's own historical materials with beginning the truly global era of football broadcasting and player recognition, the first World Cup where a player's individual fame transcended his national audience on this scale. Number 7, Wembley Stadium in London, England, hosted the 1966 World Cup final on July 30th, 1966, between England and West Germany. In extra time, with the score at 2-2, England's Geoff Hurst struck a shot that hit the crossbar and bounced down. The ball's exact relationship to the goal line became one of the most disputed moments in football history. Soviet linesman Tofik Bakramov signaled the goal. England went on to win 4-2, with Hurst completing a hat trick. FIFA's own archives acknowledge that no conclusive photographic or video evidence from 1966 definitively proves the ball crossed the line. A 1996 study commissioned by Sky Sports using computer modeling and surviving footage from multiple angles referenced extensively in subsequent BBC Sport retrospectives, concluded the ball was approximately 6 centimeters short of the line, though this remains disputed by German football historians to this day. The Wembley controversy directly informed FIFA's eventual adoption of goal line technology decades later. FIFA's own announcement of Hawkeye goal line technology ahead of the 2014 World Cup explicitly referenced 1966 as the foundational case for why technological verification was necessary, a 50-year gap between the controversy and FIFA's technological response to it. Number 6, the Azteca Stadium in Mexico City hosted the 1970 World Cup semifinal between Italy and extra time with 5 goals scored in the last 20 minutes plus extra time. Fact documented extensively in BBC Sports Archive of Broadcasting History. The Azteca semifinal, with its chaotic late goals and the high-altitude conditions affecting player fatigue, became, according to multiple broadcasting historians cited in The Guardian's retrospective coverage, the match that demonstrated to broadcasters worldwide the commercial value of live color football coverage. Television rights for the World Cup, which had been a minor revenue line for FIFA prior to 1970, became following this tournament one of the organization's primary income sources. FIFA's own financial history documents a significant escalation in broadcast rights valuations, beginning with the 1974 World Cup cycle, directly following the commercial demonstration effect of the 1970 tournament's color broadcasts. Number 5, the second, 1986. Diego Armando Maradona punched the ball into the net past English goalkeeper Peter Shilton in the 51st minute. His own description of the goal, "A little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God," became, according to multiple football dictionaries and language reference works, one of the most quoted phrases in football history. FIFA's technical reports from subsequent decades repeatedly cite the 1986 incident as a foundational case study in discussions of officiating technology. The International Football Association Board's own published history of the video assistant referee system, released alongside VR's 2018 World Cup introduction, explicitly lists the 1986 handball among the small number of historical incidents used to justify the technology's necessity to member federations during approval discussions. It took FIFA 32 years to introduce VR following the 1986 incident. When VR finally arrived in 2018, the Hand of God was one of the specific historical justifications cited in IFAB's own published rationale documents. Number 4, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California hosted the 1994 World Cup final on July 17, 1994, between Brazil and Italy, the first world final decided by a penalty shootout, with Brazil winning 3-2 on penalties after a 0-0 draw. Roberto Baggio's missed penalty, sailing over the crossbar, became one of the most replayed images in World Cup history. But the 1994 tournament is remembered for a second reason that changed football permanently. Colombian defender Andres Escobar, having scored an own goal against the United States in the group stage that contributed to Colombia's elimination, was murdered in Medellin, Colombia on July 2, 1994, 10 days after the World Cup ended. The Guardian's investigative reporting from the period and subsequent retrospectives published by the BBC document the killing as connected to gambling losses linked to Colombian organized crime figures who had bet heavily on the match. FIFA's subsequent player welfare and security protocols for international tournaments were substantially revised following 1994, according to FIFA's own published security guidelines history. The Escobar case remains, according to multiple sports sociology studies referenced in academic football literature, the most extreme documented consequence of football gambling culture intersecting with a World Cup result. Number 3, the 1998 World Cup in France introduced for knockout stage matches the golden goal rule. Extra time would end immediately if either team scored, rather than playing the full 30 minutes. The golden goal rule had been trialed in various competitions through the 1990s, but the 1998 World Cup was its highest-profile implementation. French defender Laurent Blanc scored France's golden goal against Paraguay in the round of 16, the first golden goal in World Cup history, decided in the 114th minute. FIFA's Technical Study Group report from the 1998 tournament and subsequent reports from the 2002 World Cup, where the rule was also used, documented increasing criticism from coaches and players that the golden goal encouraged excessively defensive extra-time tactics, teams playing for penalties rather than risking the sudden death goal. IFAB abolished the golden goal rule in 2004, citing the FIFA Technical Report's findings directly. The rule's 3-tournament lifespan, 1998, 2002, and its removal before 2006 is referenced in football rule-making literature as one of the clearest examples of a World Cup-tested rule change being reversed based on tournament data. Number 2, the 2010 World Cup in South Africa introduced global television audiences to the Vuvuzela, a plastic horn traditional to South African football culture played continuously by spectators throughout every match. The BBC's own audience feedback data from the 2010 tournament, referenced in subsequent broadcasting industry analyses, recorded an unprecedented volume of complaints about the instrument's drone, described by The Guardian's broadcasting correspondent at the time as "a million wasps in a jar," which broadcasters struggled to filter from stadium audio feeds. Broadcasters' technical response to the Vuvuzela directly accelerated the development and deployment of directional and crowd-isolating microphone technology for major sporting events. Sky Sports' own technical broadcasting history credits the 2010 World Cup audio challenges with several specific audio engineering innovations, subsequently used across major tournament broadcasts, including the 2014 and 2018 World Cups. Number 1, the 2022 FIFA World Cup, held in Qatar, was the first World Cup played in November and December rather than the traditional June-July window that had been used for every prior tournament since 1930. FIFA's own statements regarding the calendar shift, made during the bidding and planning process and documented extensively in temporary reporting from Reuters, the Associated Press, and the BBC, cited Qatar's extreme summer temperatures, regularly exceeding 40 degrees Celsius, as the reason for the unprecedented schedule change. The Qatar calendar shift required, for the first time in World Cup history, a mid-season pause across every major domestic football league globally. The Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and Ligue 1 all restructured their 2022-23 seasons specifically to accommodate a 6-week tournament break in the middle of the domestic calendar, a logistical change documented extensively across European football's governing body's own published 2022-23 season calendars. The 2022 tournament also became, according to FIFA's own Henson viewership figures, the most watched World Cup in history, with FIFA citing a cumulative global audience exceeding 5 billion across the tournament. Argentina won the final against France in a match that went to penalties after a 3-3 draw. Itself one of the most watched single football matches ever broadcast, according to multiple national broadcaster viewership reports across Europe and South America. The 2022 calendar shift broke the near-century-long assumption that the World Cup occupies a dedicated summer window when no major domestic football is being played. Subsequent FIFA tournament planning documents for the expanded 48-team 2026 World Cup explicitly reference the 2022 calendar restructuring as a precedent for future scheduling flexibility, meaning the World Cup currently being played as this video is being made exists, in scheduling terms, in a football calendar permanently reshaped by what happened in Qatar. 10 moments, 92 years of football. And in every case, the thing that changed was not just the result of a single match, it was something structural. How matches are broadcast, how goals are reviewed, how tournaments are scheduled, how players are protected, how rules themselves are written and rewritten based on what actually happens on the pitch. FIFA's own historical archive, spanning over 9 decades of technical reports, rule changes, and broadcasting agreements, tells a story that most fans never see watching the matches themselves. Every controversial goal, every broadcasting innovation, every tragedy becomes eventually a footnote in a rulebook, or a clause in a broadcasting contract, or a paragraph in a security protocol that quietly shapes every World Cup that follows. The World Cup being played right now is built, in ways most viewers will never notice, on the wreckage and triumph of everything on this list: the silence of the Maracanazo in 1950, the tactical revolution of Bern in 1954, the 6 centimeters that may or may not have crossed a line at Wembley in 1966, and the 6-week mid-season pause that Qatar made permanent in 2022. Football remembers its goals. Football is shaped by everything that happened around them. Subscribe for more World Cup history, and let us know in the comments which moment from this list you think changed the game the most.